"You'll always be a loser." He laughed. "Today I bought the company and fired him." The words that once shattered my world have become the foundation of my greatest triumph. Funny how life works sometimes. 5 years ago, I sat across from Richard Blake's polished mahogany desk, my resume trembling in my sweating hands. The corner office of Meridian Tech, with its floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city skyline, seemed designed to intimidate. And Richard, with his tailored suit, his perfectly coiffed silver hair, and that smirk that never quite left his face, seemed designed to break people. My throat tightened as he flipped through my portfolio with casual disinterest, occasionally letting out small huffs that might have been laughs. Each page turn felt like a judgment, each second of silence another nail in my professional coffin. I'd worked nights and weekends on that portfolio, pouring everything I had into designs I actually believed in. Designs I thought could revolutionize Meridian's outdated product line. The ache in my shoulders intensified as Richard finally looked up, his eyes cold as they met mine. Not cruel exactly, just empty, as if I were a minor inconvenience in his day, a speck he needed to brush away before moving on to matters actually worthy of his attention. The memory still burns, how he leaned back in his chair, the leather creaking beneath his weight, and delivered the assessment that would echo in my mind for years to come. Not a rejection, that would have been kinder. No, Richard shared his thoughts on my prospects, my talents, my very worth as a person. His words sliced through me, each one finding vital organs and twisting. Loser, mediocre, delusional, waste of time. I can still feel the heat that rushed to my face, the way my vision blurred at the edges. The shame burning so hot I thought my skin might actually catch fire. The worst part wasn't even his laughter. It was how casually cruel he was, how dismissive, as if crushing someone's dreams wasn't even worth putting down his coffee for. When I stumbled out of Meridian Tech that day, the spring sunshine felt like a mockery, the world continuing as normal while mine had shattered. I remember standing on the sidewalk, people streaming around me, feeling like I'd been hollowed out. Like something vital had been scooped from my chest, leaving nothing but an echo chamber for Richard's words to bounce around in. That night, I drank until my hands stopped shaking, until Richard's voice stopped replaying in my head, until the pain dulled enough that I could breathe without it feeling like swallowing glass. And when morning came, along with its brutal hangover, I made a decision while hunched over my toilet. Richard's assessment of me would not be the final word. The following weeks melted into a gray haze. Job applications sent into the void. Rejection emails that I started to anticipate like clockwork. Savings dwindling with each rent payment. Friends calling less frequently. Their own lives moving forward while mine seemed stuck in that moment in Richard's office. The worst was seeing Meridian's new product line launch, with designs eerily similar to those in my rejected portfolio. Not identical, but close enough that the knife twisted deeper. I hit bottom exactly 43 days after my interview with Richard. I remember because it was my birthday, and I spent it staring at my ceiling, watching the shadows shift as the day slipped away. My phone remained silent. My bank account hovered just above empty. The cup of cold coffee on my nightstand perfectly matched my emotional state, bitter, stagnant, and growing colder by the minute. That night, something changed. Not dramatically, not with any Hollywood lightning strike of inspiration, just a quiet shift deep inside. A small, hard seed of determination taking root. If I was truly a loser, as Richard had proclaimed with such certainty, then I had nothing left to lose. And people with nothing to lose are dangerous. I started small. A freelance gig designing logos for local businesses that barely covered groceries. A part-time position teaching basic design software at a community college. Nothing glamorous, nothing that would make Richard Blake think twice about his assessment of me. But they were steps, tiny, incremental steps away from the person who had sat crushed in that office and towards someone new. The plan came to me gradually, forming like a photograph developing in darkroom chemicals. Not revenge, not yet. First, survival, then growth. Then maybe, if the universe didn't have other plans, justice. I began mapping out Richard's career, Meridian structure, the industry landscape. Knowledge is power, and I was starting from a position of absolute powerlessness. Each new piece of information was a small weight added to my side of the scale. 6 months after the interview, I launched my own design consultancy. Nothing fancy, just me, my laptop, and a hunger that never seemed to fade no matter how much work I took on. I called it Phoenix Design. Melodramatic, perhaps, but it reminded me daily of what I was trying to do, rise from the ashes of who I'd been. The first year was brutal. 18-hour days. Clients who paid late or not at all. Mistakes that cost me contracts I desperately needed. Every failure whispered in Richard's voice. Loser. Mediocre. Delusional. I used his words as fuel, turning them over in my mind during pre-dawn design sessions, letting them drive me when exhaustion threatened to take over. By year 2, things began to shift. A major project went viral in design circles. A former Meridian client, dissatisfied with their recent work, took a chance on my smaller operation. My team grew from just me to 3 people, then 5, then 12. Each new hire, each new client felt like a small rebellion against Richard's assessment. I wasn't directly challenging him yet, but I was proving him wrong with every contract signed. I became obsessed with Meridian's operations. Not in a way anyone would notice. I was careful about that. But I followed their stock, their product launches, their personnel changes. I noted when Richard was promoted to executive creative director. I tracked when they lost key accounts. I filed away the whispers of financial troubles, of declining innovation, of internal power struggles. I watched and I waited and I built. Year 3 brought the opportunity I'd been unconsciously preparing for. Meridian's parent company announced it was considering selling the troubled division. The news sent a jolt through me so powerful I had to sit down. My coffee spilling across financial reports spread across my desk. My assistants must have thought I'd received terrible news, the way the blood drained from my face. They couldn't have known I was experiencing the first real taste of hope. The next 18 months became a carefully orchestrated campaign. Phoenix Design continued its meteoric rise, capturing market share and industry attention. Meanwhile, I courted investors, presenting a vision for acquiring and revitalizing Meridian. Most laughed me out of the room. Who was I, this upstart with a small, though successful company, to think I could acquire an established player like Meridian? But some listened. Some saw what I saw, a bloated company resting on fading laurels, vulnerable to the right kind of disruption. Venture capital, angel investors, bank loans leveraged against Phoenix's increasingly valuable contracts. Each meeting, each pitch, each negotiation brought me closer. I stopped sleeping more than 4 hours a night. My apartment became a war room of spreadsheets, market analyses, and strategy documents. Friends worried. Family called more frequently, their voices tinged with concern. I assured them I was fine, just busy with work success. I didn't tell them about the shrine to revenge I'd built in my mind, the altar where I sacrificed my peace. Then came the leak. Meridian's financial troubles were worse than anyone had realized. Years of mismanagement, of prioritizing executive bonuses over innovation, had left them vulnerable. Their stock plummeted. The parent company, eager to stop the bleeding, became more motivated to sell. The asking price dropped once, then again. I remember the morning my financial advisor called. Her voice contained a mixture of disbelief and excitement I'll never forget. The numbers had shifted. With the backing I'd secured, the acquisition was now within reach. Not easily, not without risk. I'd be leveraged to my eyeballs, betting everything on my ability to turn Meridian around, but possible. That night, I stood on my balcony, looking at the same city skyline visible from Richard's office years before. The lights blurred as tears filled my eyes. Not sadness, not even joy, but a strange release. All the hurt, all the shame, all the burning determination that had driven me was crystallizing into something new, something powerful. The negotiations took 3 more months. Endless meetings, countless revisions to the offer, due diligence that revealed even more problems with Meridian than I'd anticipated. Throughout it all, I maintained a careful distance from Richard himself. As far as he knew, if he thought of me at all, I was still that failed applicant from years ago. The nobody he'd laughed out of his office. The day the papers were signed remains the strangest of my life. Sitting in a conference room at the law firm, watching as representatives from the parent company signed away Meridian Tech to my holding company. My signature, the final one, the one that changed everything, felt surreal to place on the document. The pen seemed to weigh 1,000 pounds the moment stretched into infinity. And then it was done. Meridian was mine. I didn't make my move immediately. That would have been too obvious, too emotional. Instead, I spent weeks learning Meridian from the inside, reviewing personnel files, examining projects, identifying the true problems and the possible solutions. Richard remained in his position, unaware that the company now belonged to someone he'd once destroyed with casual cruelty. The first changes were structural. New reporting lines, new project approval processes, new marketing strategies, each one carefully designed to showcase the failures of the old guard, particularly Richard's department. I watched from my new office, not Richard's. I'd taken a different one, with an even better view. As confusion gave way to concern among the executive team, Richard's emails grew increasingly frantic as his authority was subtly undermined. Projects he championed were questioned or delayed. Team members he'd relied on were reassigned. None of it pointed directly to him being targeted. It all appeared to be part of the post-acquisition restructuring, but he felt the walls closing in. I could see it in his hunched shoulders when he walked the halls, in the dark circles forming under his eyes. 2 months after the acquisition, I scheduled the meeting. 9 a.m., the main conference room. All department heads required to attend. The calendar invitation offered no agenda beyond strategic direction review. Richard's acceptance came within minutes. Eager, I imagined, to finally meet the mysterious new owner and make his case for relevance. I arrived early, selecting a seat at the head of the table with my back to the door. Executives filed in, their nervous energy palpable. Small talk died when I didn't turn around to acknowledge them. I waited until precisely 9 before swiveling my chair to face the room. The recognition didn't come immediately. Why would it? In Richard's mind, I was a forgettable failure from years ago. But as I began speaking, outlining my vision for Meridian's future, I saw the moment it clicked. The slight widening of his eyes, the subtle straightening of his spine, the color draining from his face as memory aligned with present reality. I never said his name, never indicated I remembered him at all. I simply laid out the new direction, the areas of underperformance, the changes that would be necessary, the departments that would be eliminated, the positions that were now redundant. His position. To the room it was business, ruthless perhaps, but business. Only Richard and I knew the truth hiding beneath my professional veneer. Only he could hear the echo of his own words coming back to him as I dismantled his career with the same casual cruelty he'd once shown me. When the meeting ended, executives filed out in somber silence. All except Richard, who remained frozen in his chair, his eyes never leaving mine. The door closed behind the last person, leaving us alone in a silence thick with unspoken history. I gathered my papers slowly, deliberately, allowing the moment to stretch. His breathing had become audible, rapid and shallow. When I finally looked up, meeting his gaze directly, the recognition in his eyes was complete. He knew exactly who I was, exactly what had happened, exactly why. No words passed between us. None were necessary. I simply stood, straightened my jacket, and walked to the door. As my hand touched the handle, his voice finally broke the silence. A hoarse whisper, shaking with some emotion I couldn't identify. Or perhaps didn't want to. I didn't turn around, didn't acknowledge whatever he was trying to say. Simply opened the door and walked out, leaving him sitting alone in the conference room where his professional life had just ended. Human Resources delivered the formal termination notice that afternoon. Security escorted him from the building within the hour. I watched from my office window as he emerged onto the street below, a cardboard box of personal items in his arms, looking small and lost in the midday sun. The victory should have tasted sweeter. That's what surprises me most looking back. Years of planning, of driving myself to the edge of breakdown, all leading to that moment. And when it came, the satisfaction was hollower than I'd imagined. There was relief, yes, vindication certainly, but not the transformative joy I'd expected. Just a quiet, complicated feeling that didn't fit neatly into any emotional category I recognized. In the weeks that followed, I threw myself into the real work of saving Meridian. The acquisition hadn't been purely about revenge. The company had genuine potential, buried under years of mismanagement. New talent was brought in. Innovative projects were greenlit. Toxic elements of the culture, many fostered under Richard's leadership, were systematically addressed. Phoenix Design was folded into Meridian's operations, creating a stronger whole. Former colleagues who had once looked down on me now reported to me, their discomfort evident in every interaction. I took no pleasure in their discomfort. At least I tell myself that's true. What mattered was the work, the vision, the future we were building. 6 months after Richard's departure, Meridian launched its most successful product line in a decade. 1 year in, our stock had doubled. The revenge narrative that had driven me for so long began to fade, replaced by something more sustainable. Pride in what we were creating, in the company we were building from the ashes of what Richard and his ilk had nearly destroyed. I still think about him sometimes. Not often, but in quiet moments. I heard he struggled to find comparable work, that his reputation suffered from the very public failure at Meridian. Part of me, a part I'm not proud of, hopes that's true. that he experienced even a fraction of the devastation he so casually inflicted on others. But another part, growing stronger with time, hopes he found his own Phoenix moment, his own rebirth from the ashes of failure. Yesterday marked 5 years since that interview in Richard's office. 5 years since he laughed and called me a loser. 3 years since I bought the company and fired him. As I stood at the podium accepting an Industry Innovation Award on behalf of Meridian, scanning the faces of my team in the audience, I realized something had changed within me. The wound that had driven me for so long had scarred over, still visible but no longer painful to touch. Richard was wrong about me being a loser, but I was wrong too about what winning would feel like. It wasn't the moment of firing him. It wasn't buying the company. It wasn't even the professional success that followed. It was this, standing on my own, defined by what I'd built rather than what had once been taken from me. The real victory wasn't revenge. It was becoming someone who no longer needed it.